Pete Alonso has officially re-signed with the Mets. This happened, a couple of days ago now, but I think the implications of this deal and how long it took to materialize are fascinating. But here's some of the details. 2 years, $54 million. There's a player option for year 2 worth $24 million. So you basically can say this is a 1-year deal worth about $30 million. We'll see what
Not
happens.
a bad deal.
It's not a bad deal. It's not a bad deal. I think both the Mets and Pete Alonso, I need a turn of phrase that's not as crass, but they both got caught with their pants down. That's what I'll say. And they're staring at each other like, who's going to go first in this game of chicken they've been playing?
Right.
And they waited too long, and then now they're stuck with each other. Whether they wanted to be or not, this is where they're at. They ran out of time, they ran out of other options, or whatever happened, and now here we are. So I think that's why it's structured the way it's structured. Because they're both kind of like, I didn't like the way you handled my Wheaties. So can we play nice for a season, and then we'll kind of figure it out after that.
I think so, and this is the thing, he's 30 years old. So he's not like Juan Soto, because Juan Soto is like the youngest guy ever to hit free agency. I know that's hyperbole, but that's what it feels like, because he is not very old at all. But Pete Alonso is 30 years old. And so I'm sure that as a Scott Boras guy, Boras was probably like, we want to get that 10-year deal, get you till you're 40. But every team was like, first off, no, he's a slugger with a below average glove. So we don't want him for that long, right?
Yeah.
And after coming off of a down year by Pete Alonso's standards, right?
Sure.
The market was not as hot. And I think that they had kind of gotten to a point where they accepted that it was going to be a short-term deal because of that, because he's 30 years old, because he's a slugger with a below-average glove. It's not going to age well. That eventually he's going to have to move to DH, and that's just the way it's going to go, right?
Yep.
But see if you can get things turned around this year and have almost like a prove-it deal, right? Despite the fact that he still had a good year, right?
He did have a good year.
He still hit 34 home runs, hit 240, but he only had a 2.6 WAR. And his OPS plus was 123, which is low for him because in 2022 he had a 146 OPS plus, but in 2023 he had a 123 OPS. So that's 2 years in a row, 123. So I'm curious if the Mets and the market were like, let's make sure he's not like on the downhill side.
Like sliding.
If he can have a good year this year, he can opt out and get paid. Probably 5-6 year deal, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I also think that this is a prove-it deal for the relationship. And that's the part I was trying to stress earlier. And I know it's a business, and I know we're all professionals. However, I do think that we continue to be human beings with emotional centers. And when you poke at those too hard, and you rub people the wrong way too many times, you those things endure. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And it won't be interesting. This season will be interesting performance-wise, but it is every year. It will be interesting next season to see what happens. And I think I want to know from you, Brad, how important do you feel the team's overall performance / accomplishment will be in Pete Alonso's option?
I think. I mean, they made it to the NLCS this last year. That's a good run, right?
Yeah.
You're one of the final 4 teams. That's a good run. I don't know that he can necessarily have the expectation of the World Series of like improving on that run. I think mostly it's going to come down to his individual performance and maybe what the Mets do at the trade deadline, depending on where they're at, the kind of moves that the team makes to improve as needed. If they're like right there in the wild card, because let's be honest, they're probably not going to be there for the division this year if the Braves actually stay healthy.
If they come back, yeah. It's going to be because that's very interesting in the NL
between
East.
The Braves and the Phillies. Like that's a tough division, just with those two right there. So I think you've got to see where you're at in the wild card, where you're at in the division, possibly. If you're hanging tough with those two teams, like you got a good team on your hands. So
Yeah.
I think you see what management does at the trade deadline, and I don't think you necessarily even have to make a deep run to opt back in or restructure that contract for a few more years and more money, right? That I think you just see management say, we believe in you and at least a few of the guys around you that can win, maybe not this year, maybe next year or the year after, right? Because they basically have bottomless pits as pockets
Right.
from the
So,
way that they talk.
yeah, you answered my question. I should say you answered the question I meant to have asked was, if you're Pete Alonso, how much of this season's accomplishment is riding on your exercising the option, right?
Yeah, I guess the way that what I meant to say was, I guess the shorter way to say it is, he needs to have a good year, and I think everybody around him needs to perform for him to come back next year.
And the
Right.
team needs to
If he has a
show.
terrible year, though, you can take it to the bank that he's going to opt in for that second year. He's going to take that
Absolutely.
24 million
Yeah.
guaranteed because he's not going to want to hit the market if he has a terrible year. But I
No.
think that if he has a good year, I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to restructure. But if he has a great year and the Mets stink, he's going somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right.
I think that's where I was getting at with
Uh-huh.
what the front office does at the deadline. So,
Well, I know. That's why I said I think you answered the question. The question I should have asked. That did I
okay.
anyway? You did a great job.
I
Brad.
see.
Way to go. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Um.
Well, my question for you though, Brig, like
Yeah.
I'm curious. Do you think how much better does this make the Mets? Like, are they markedly better? I mean, obviously they're better, but like, does Pete Alonso take them from the wild card to the division or the division to the NLCS? I honestly don't feel like this team is going to get back to the NLCS, much less make the jump to the World Series just because Pete Alonso got here or came back. Because I feel like there are some other problems, and I think there's going to be some regression to the mean this year.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. I don't think Pete Alonso is your linchpin, who's going to hold it all together. This is not the one guy we needed to just seal it up and make it go. Nope, that's not Pete Alonso. And it might have been a few years ago, maybe, but it's not right now. And it's not for him, and it's not for the way the team is built yet either. And I say yet to your point about what happens at the deadline. We don't know what that'll be. And God forbid, Pete Alonso does not end up needing to be replaced anywhere between now and the end of the season due to unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah.
But should that be the case, the question then is, will the Mets be that much worse without him? It's a counter argument to will they be that much better with him? I think we've decided is a marginal but positive decision to have him there, right? It's positive,
right?
But it's not high impact positive. If they lose Pete Alonso, where are we on the opposite end? What do you think?
I don't want to say catastrophic, but you kind of hit the pan. I feel like you hit the panic button, right?
Yeah.
Because this is my thing is that with him, they're almost as good as they were last year. Because I feel like like I said, there's going to be some regression, and they lost a few pieces, lost a little bit of pitching, which is I think going to be some part of a problem for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
But with Pete Alonso, the drop off this year from last year is not nearly as stark as what it would have been without him.
I think I agree with you. I think we've made our position clear on adding him, but taking him away, I think, diminishes the entire ball club's capability 20%, maybe 30%.
You've got a gaping hole in his spot in the lineup. Like I know you've got Juan Soto, but I don't want to say their skill set because Juan Soto could go out there and hit a bunch of bombs too, right? Like he can hit for power with the best of them.
Yeah,
but
he will.
Also his hitting approach is different though. He sprays the ball way more than Pete Alonso ever would.
100%.
Right. So you have a different plate approach in Soto than you do in Alonso, and so I think that it would be hard to fill the role that Pete Alonso fills if he's not there, despite the fact that you have Juan Soto, because Juan Soto is only one man, right? And I
Yeah,
think
don't
that
ask him
those
that,
two
though.
working together, those two hitting back to back in the lineup is going to be really good for both of them.
That's going to be good. I agree. Which is why if they lose Pete for any reason, that's rough. That's going to be bad news bears.